Hello, friends. The 809th day of the war between Russia and Ukraine continues. The Ukrainian armed forces have withdrawn from some positions in the Kharkiv region. This was reported late yesterday in the Sharp Caps unit of the Omega detachment of the National Guard of Ukraine. Heavy fighting continues in the Kharkiv region due to great pressure from the Russians. Our defenders had to retreat from some positions. At 14 o'clock, fighting began for the village of Hlyboke, which is of strategic importance. The Russians are suffering huge losses, but they are still pressing, and in some places succeeding. Night it will be very difficult, the unit wrote in the Telegram channel. Zelensky said in his evening address today that defensive battles continue in the Kharkiv region on a significant part of our border strip. The president confirmed that the Russians are trying to gain a foothold in a number of villages that were previously in the gray zone. According to Zelensky, the idea of attacks on the Kharkiv region is to stretch the forces of the Ukrainian army. Zelensky also called the situation near Vovchansk extremely difficult. In the vicinity of the city of Vovchansk, the situation is extremely difficult. The city is under constant Russian fire, and counterattack actions by our military continue, the president said. Also, the commander-in-chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Syrsky, writes that the situation in the Kharkiv region is difficult. According to him, fighting is currently ongoing in border areas along the state border with Russia. U.S. Secretary of State Blinken answered a question about the situation in the Kharkiv region in an interview with CBS News. He said that now a difficult moment has come in Ukraine, but it will be able to hold the front line. I am convinced that Ukraine can effectively maintain its defense line in the east, the Secretary of State said. At the same time, Blinken believes that the many-month delay in approving the request for an additional budget and sending equipment to Ukraine entailed costs. In turn, the Russian Ministry of Defense today reports about the next settlements captured by the Russian army in the Kharkiv region. The Russian agency claims that these are the settlements of Hatysche, Krasne, Morokhovets and Oliinykove. Ukraine did not confirm this. Meanwhile, the Russians completely captured 6 border villages in the Kharkiv region: Strilecha, Pylna, Krasne, Borysivka, Ohirtseve and Pletenivka. They have also already entered several other villages and are trying to gain a foothold, reaching, among other things, the outskirts of Vovchansk. This is reported by the Ukrainian military telegram channel Deep State, which publishes an updated map of military operations in the north of the region. The telegram channel indicates 2 directions of the Russian offensive. The first is on Lipsy. In this area, Russian troops consolidate in the villages of Morokhovets, Oliinykove, Lukiantsi and Zelene. Battles continue for Hlyboke, which is the last settlement before the main task in that area for the Russians to occupy Lipsy, writes Deep State. The second direction is to Vovchansk. In this direction, Pletenivka and Ohirtseve have been captured, and attempts are underway to gain a foothold in the villages of Hatysche, Starytsia and Buhruvatka. Also, Russian troops have approached the northern outskirts of Vovchansk and are trying to gain a foothold there. The situation continues to become more complicated. The enemy is gradually bringing more and more forces into our territory. Infantry is constantly entering, moving in groups into populated areas and trying to gain a foothold there, feed themselves and continue moving. Support is provided by a small amount of equipment, artillery, aviation, and there is also the activity of drones and electronic warfare systems. The defense forces are trying to stop the enemy and inflict defeat, writes the Telegram channel. Deep State points out that if communication between units of the Ukrainian armed forces is not established, then Russia will have even greater success, which will lead to very negative consequences. However, the loss of villages was not officially confirmed. According to the General Staff, in the Kharkiv direction, Russian troops carried out 12 attacks in the areas of 10 settlements. I note that the General Staff report does not indicate that these attacks were repelled, as was indicated for other directions of the front. Ukrainian military officer Yaroslavsky, states that the main reason for problems with defense on the border in the Kharkiv region is the lack of fortification systems. The first line of fortifications and mines simply did not exist. The enemy freely entered the gray zone along the entire cordon line, which in principle should not have been gray in 2 years. There should have been concrete fortifications at -3 floors on the Ukrainian border, and there weren't even minutes. We come to the conclusion that this is either insane theft or deliberate sabotage. I know that the 125th Territorial Defense Brigade, who abandoned their positions, are already giving explanations that they were given acts of acceptance and transfer of fortifications to sign that were not even 30% ready as completed construction, Yaroslavsky writes on his Facebook page. He also reports on the difficult situation in Vovchansk. The enemy is gathering reserves. Street fighting has begun and the city is being surrounded, says the military man. In turn, the 125th Brigade responded to claims that it allegedly abandoned positions in the north of the Kharkiv region. The brigade called the information about the retreat of individual units from the defensive lines entrusted to them absolutely false. I responsibly declare that the situation in the brigade's defense zone is complex, but controllable units of the 125th Brigade are repelling superior enemy forces, maintaining constancy in battle formations, the brigade commander said. At the same time, the military says that the settlements that the Russians entered were in the gray zone, and therefore the enemy's success is quite conditional. The territory occupied by the enemy has been localized and is subject to constant fire, the brigade added. Also, the authorities of the Kharkiv region denied rumors in local public pages that the head of the regional military administration, Sinegubov, left Kharkiv amid the Russian offensive. The full leadership of the Kharkiv regional military administration is in Kharkiv, fulfilling the tasks assigned by the country's political leadership and the General Staff of Ukraine, said First Deputy Head of the Administration Roman Semenya. He also responded to a statement by the military Yaroslavsky, who accused the authorities of failing to build fortifications in the north of the region, where the Russians are advancing. The fortifications built by the regional military administration are occupied by the Ukrainian Defense Forces, Semenya said. Further in his comments, he clarified that the administration carried out work on one of the lanes occupied by the military, and that hundreds of millions of hryvnia were spent on this. The official said that statements on this topic are misinformation and work for the enemy. The head of the Vovchansk city administration, Gambarashvili, said that machine gun fire could be heard on the northern outskirts. Yes, indeed, on the northern border of the city itself you can hear machine gun shots and explosions, but Vovchansk is 4 kilometers from the border, and this zone is constantly under fire. There are constant battles, the official said. Answering the question whether there are Russian military personnel in the city, Gambarashvili replied that, now this information has not been officially confirmed, because the military is currently working. Meanwhile, Western experts say that the Russians have already advanced almost 89 square kilometers in the Kharkiv region. Also, according to their data over the past 7 days, Ukraine has lost a total of 197 square kilometers, and the Russians managed to capture almost 124 square kilometers of territory. At the same time, the main intelligence directorate of Ukraine stated that the Russian offensive in the Kharkiv region was on schedule and suggested that Russian soldiers surrender. We can say that the enemy's actions in this direction began according to a schedule that was known, about which the main intelligence directorate, as expected, all the necessary authorities, leadership and command were informed, said intelligence spokesman Yusuf. According to him, in the Kharkiv direction, Russian troops deployed fighters from the Moscow and Leningrad military districts. He called on Russians to surrender and added that a decision has been made to open an additional camp for Russian prisoners of war in Ukraine as soon as possible. In my personal opinion, this is some kind of surrealism. Friends, this channel exists solely thanks to your support. If you have the opportunity and desire to support the channel, I will be very grateful to you. Thank you very much and see you in the next video.